I think in the short run, anytime you have a kind of disruptive change in the basic model of IT, and I think cloud computing represents that, the role of the IT department actually enlarges in many ways because companies look to their IT professionals, obviously, to help them through the change. So I think if we look in the near and medium term, the role of the IT department, in one sense, is as the experts who will help companies make smart decisions about what to move to the cloud and when to move it. And if we look a little further into the medium term, I think we begin to see some of the roles of IT beginning to shift. Obviously, for most companies and for most organizations today, much of the IT staff is devoted to essentially running the infrastructure, running the private infrastructure, the data center and the privately installed applications and so forth. And if we assume that more and more of that over time is going to move out into the cloud, then we have to assume that the role of IT begins to shift away from maintenance and other infrastructural kind of jobs and more toward some new roles, such as what I'll call information brokerage, which is, how do we connect our own organization's processes with the IT capacities that are available out there in the cloud, and then also some higher level types of things like, how do we think about the flow of information management process flows and such like, and those type of things, which are, of course, part of many IT departments' purview right now, but I think become even more important in the years ahead as some of the infrastructural type jobs move out into the cloud. Well, I think there are really a couple of answers. The one obvious concern that comes up all the time is the matter of security and how comfortable are we pushing responsibility for the security of our data outside of our own company. And I think that's a real issue, obviously, and something that all organizations are going to have to struggle with. My own sense is that actually in the end, one of the appeals of the cloud is going to be that it enables companies to push out responsibility for security to experts outside of the company, because I think ultimately the cloud providers are going to actually be on the very cutting edge of data security, and I predict that ultimately the cloud will be a more secure environment than the kind of fragmented environment we have today. But still, there are, of course, we're still in the early stages of the development of the cloud infrastructure, so the security issue is a very big issue and kind of really requires the building of a great degree of trust between the supplier and the company or the organization. Now, beyond that, you could also make an argument that really the biggest obstacle is an attitudinal obstacle rather than a technological one, and it really requires organizations to overcome their kind of the past practices and the past ownership and control over IT assets and begin to develop that kind of trust that allows you to push some of those assets outside of the four walls of your company. And this is the same type of attitudinal change that companies have had to go through in the past when we saw the movement to the PC, for instance, the initial movement to incorporate internet kind of technologies into an organization. And the danger here is for companies, I think, is that they become locked. Some companies may become locked into the past and simply will use concerns such as security as ways to ignore the new opportunities that the cloud presents. So I think companies need to be deliberate in looking at the cloud and deciding when and what to move into the cloud, but I think they need to avoid being locked into the past and simply make sure they have at least as much a focus on the opportunities and the benefits that the cloud provides as on the risks involved I don't think it was so much one event as an increasing acceptance in the business world, the education world, and the government world that the cloud is going to be an important part of the future of IT, even in the short term. Up until a year or two ago, there was a great deal of resistance to the entire idea of the cloud. A lot of people simply kind of dismissed it as a pie-in-the-sky type of future scenario. And I think we've moved beyond that in that even just seeing the way the IT industry, the supply industry, has begun to shift its innovation and its investment away from proprietary systems and toward cloud-based systems, I think has given a lot of people the impetus to shift their own thinking about the cloud and begin to look at it not as something that lies out there in the uncertain future, but as something that they need to consider immediately and begin to take advantage of. Well, I think you'll see three things, really. One is the growing use of particular software as a service types of applications, subscription kinds of applications like Salesforce, for instance, has pioneered in CRM. Mm-hmm. Second, I think you'll begin to see, and we're really at the very early stages of this, but a shift of some of the basic infrastructure out into the cloud, and this might be, drawing on computing power or storage resources in the cloud as a supplement to what you have in-house, and a way to avoid, for instance, the capital expenses that go with constantly expanding your own computing plant, so to speak. And so I think that over the next year or two, we'll see more and more of a move to use some of the basic infrastructure that the cloud provides. And finally, and in some ways most interesting, I think, is going to be the way that social networking, which is a cloud-based service already well established through things like Facebook, obviously, how companies begin to embrace that model of collaboration and sharing information, both within their own organizations and also across with their partners. And I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities with the adoption of the social networking model within companies and other organizations. I think that's why large companies in particular have been fairly slow up till now to adopt the cloud. If you look at entrepreneurs, small businesses, they've been among the most aggressive adopters because the cloud allows them, in essence, to level the playing field with the companies that have big investments in IT, because you can tap into the resources of a Google or an Amazon or a Salesforce or an IBM and so forth, and without having to lay out a lot of capital to build your own infrastructure. And so it's been an ideal kind of opportunity for more entrepreneurial firms. But there is the fact that as you look toward bigger organizations, they do have a lot of money and expertise invested in building their own proprietary data centers and systems. And you're not going to, the reality is you're not going to throw that stuff out overnight. And so I think, as I said before, I think one of the risks is to simply, because of those past investments, to get locked into that legacy model of IT. And so I think the big challenge for larger organizations is to set the right course between continuing to derive value from your past investments in proprietary IT, but also beginning to explore and build on the capabilities of the cloud. And one of the models we see emerging in that process is using the cloud as a supplement, as a way to expand your own resources in a way that actually reduces risk, because it doesn't require you to make big capital investments in additional computer storage gear, applications, and so forth.